Hey there and welcome. Today we're diving into something pretty fascinating. When you look at the wealthiest women in the world, how did they actually get their money? And what we find? Well, it tells a pretty powerful story about wealth, family, and power. So yeah, that's the big question, right? How do women become billionaires? Do they build these massive empires from scratch? Or is something else going on? Well, the data tells a very specific story. All right, first, just look at this number. $38 billion. I mean, just let that sink in. It's an amount of money that's almost impossible to wrap your head around. So what is it? What's it for? That is the price tag on a single divorce settlement. Yep, that was roughly the value of the assets MacKenzie Scott got when she and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos divorced back in 2019. Just like that, overnight, this event made MacKenzie Scott one of the wealthiest people on the entire planet, and it perfectly highlights our first major path to wealth. I mean, the sheer scale of this and how fast it happened is just mind-blowing. So, the settlement gave her a 4% stake in Amazon. And remember, this is a company she was a huge part of building right from the very beginning. In one single moment, she became a global financial powerhouse. Now, MacKenzie Scott's story is definitely extraordinary, but it's not a one-off. Not at all. It actually represents a surprisingly well-traveled road to wealth for women, what we can call the divorce pathway. And as you can see, she's in some pretty famous company. We've seen it with Melinda French Gates and Bill Gates, Jocelyn Wildstein and Alec Wildstein, Anna Murdoch-Mann and Rupert Murdoch. All of these divorces led to absolutely massive transfers of wealth. Okay, so divorce is clearly a big one. But there's another path that's even more common, like way more common, and that's inheritance. More than half. Think about that for a second. Over half of all the women billionaires in the world are heiresses. They didn't get it from a business they started or a settlement. They got it from their family. This is, by a massive margin, the number one path to the top. You've probably heard of some of the most famous examples, right? We've got Françoise Bettencourt-Meyers. She's actually the world's richest woman, who inherited the L'Oreal empire. And then there's Alice Walton, whose fortune comes from Walmart, the giant her dad started. Okay, but within this idea of inheritance, there's a really interesting trend that's on the rise. It's called sideways inheritance. So this isn't the usual parent-to-child thing. This is when wealth gets transferred from one spouse to the other after their partner dies. And you know, this isn't just some tiny little footnote in the data. If you look at the top 500 wealthiest women, more than a dozen of them became billionaires exactly this way. It's a really significant piece of the puzzle. All right, so we've got divorce and inheritance as the two main highways to wealth. But what about the women who did it all themselves, the self-made entrepreneurs? Well, this is where the data gets really, really stark. Wow, I mean, this chart right here says it all. Something like 70% of these incredibly wealthy women got their fortune through either divorce or inheritance. Now, see that tiny little green slice of the pie? That's the self-made group. It's only about 5%. And when you put that number up against the men, the difference is just staggering. Yeah, only about 4 to 5% of female billionaires are self-made. For men, that number is way, way higher. Most of them built their own fortunes. The gap is just enormous. So, after all that, what does this data actually tell us? What's the big picture here? Let's just quickly break down the main points. Okay, to sum it all up, for women, the road to the very top of the wealth ladder is overwhelmingly paved by one of two things: getting assets from a divorce or inheriting a family fortune. More than half are heiresses. A tiny, tiny fraction. We're talking around 5% are self-made. And that's a world away from what we see with their male counterparts. And all of this leaves us with one last and pretty important question. If the main ways for women to get incredible wealth are through their relationships to men, either as fathers or as husbands, what does that tell us about our economic systems? You know, about the real structures of power and opportunity out there? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.